Aislinn, welcome back to Collection Cutdown. Today's video is on Alien Apocalypse, a 2005 movie starring Bruce Campbell and Renee O'Connor of Xena Warrior Princess fame. I went through a real Bruce Campbell phase, I want to say about 10 years ago. I saw Evil Dead and of course fell in love with it and the sequels. I think number 2 is my favourite, Evil Dead 2. So after seeing that, I went and tried to find all the Bruce Campbell films that he starred in. A few of them are actually going to come up in this collection. This is the first one that we're going to be doing. I remember this film being extremely low budget. It's a monster movie in the sense, I think it's like giant bugs or something. Like there's aliens, but they're like bugs. Because it's so low budget, I do remember not being that convinced by the film. But if I look at it, I think going into it this time expecting it to be that way, I think it's meant to be cheesy fun, and that's what I'm hoping for. So if I go in expecting that, I don't think I'm going to be disappointed by any bad special effects. And given that it's Bruce Campbell, like, I do find him very charismatic on screen and very funny, and that sort of action comedy thing is like peak Bruce Campbell. Like, that's my favourite thing that he does. And so that's really what I'm hoping for when it comes to this one. I think this may actually have been like a Sci Fi Channel original movie. Like, you know how they do those monster Sharknado things? I think this was one of them. That would explain the crappy special effects. The cover is clearly referencing Army of Darkness, like that angle on Bruce Campbell. And here Starship Troopers meets Army of Darkness. It's gonna get silly. I know this. When you have a role like that where it's just constantly referencing an actor's past work, it can either be amazing or terrible. So we will see how that works out. Alright, let's get into it. I'll see you all on the other side. Alien Apocalypse is about 4 astronauts who return to Earth after a 40-year mission. They've been in cryo-sleep. And when they get back, they find out that 20 years ago, aliens overran the United States, or maybe the world, and are using humans as slaves to harvest wood, which is like diamonds to their culture. Bruce Campbell and Renee O'Connor are 2 of the astronauts. Bruce Campbell ends up leading a rebellion against the aliens. Alien Apocalypse is undeniably cheesy. It's very cheap. And in many ways, it's a parody of, you know, monster movies like this, Alien Invasion, that kind of thing. So I can't go so far as to say this is a great film. It's, you know, flawed. And most of that comes down to a budgetary issue, I think. But you know what? It's actually kind of watchable. A lot of that is to do with Bruce Campbell's charm. I mean, the guy has buckets of charisma. At least I think so. I think that he's always entertaining on camera. And in a role like this, he really excels. It's kind of his bag. Mostly comedy, a little bit action, you know, so he gets to do some physical stuff. The thing that actually surprised me the most about this film was actually that it had some interesting ideas in it. World building wise, there is no way that I can fathom 20 years is enough time for people to forget what a handshake is or what TV is. Even in oral history, we have far better memories than that. The idea that Bruce Campbell's character, like, he came back to Earth and he wanted to be known as the great healer, and so when he starts leading this rebellion, everyone he encounters, he's like, oh, I can heal you. And he's an osteopath. He's not a real doctor, and that's kind of like a you know, character point for him, but he's a bit bitter about that. As he's traveling through this world and healing people, he's gaining people to his cause. And, you know, right at the end, instead of being known as the great healer, which is what he's been like pushing for, he's like, that's my title, you can call me that now. He ends up being known as the Great Exterminator because the aliens are bugs and so on. Anyway, so there were lots of little details like that where it, you know, it did feel like a parody. But really, the idea that I most liked was it didn't take a lot for the humans to become slaves to these aliens, and that was actually kind of interesting in the way they explored that how low people can go so quickly when all they can do is survive. And I actually kind of dug that, you know, and particularly in the beginning when Bruce Campbell and Renee O'Connor get caught up in this and they become like the people who they pitied when they first arrived. They were fighting each other for the meager scraps of food, things like that, that they had looked down on these other people for, and then a day later that was them. And just how quickly you go into survival mode, and they actually kind of explored that in an interesting way, and it kept coming back up, like the fact that nobody knew that these aliens could die because nobody had bothered to fight against them. They were just so afraid that they became sheep. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting concept. I think in a better movie, it could have been explored in a really interesting way. Again, not a great movie, but it had potential. I talked a little bit about how these people started following, you know, the rebellion because he heals them, and the movie kind of, you know, explores faith a little bit too, in terms of like they believe in him now, and you know, his belief then made them believe and all that sort of stuff. So I really do think that there were interesting concepts in this that actually could have been really interesting in a bigger budget, better film, because I mean the script in this is nothing special and the dialogue is silly, but it's kind of meant to be, so sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it got a chuckle out of me and other times I was just a bit like, okay. The budget was really what let down the film here, and I was expecting bad special effects, and we did get that. Like, I wouldn't call the aliens particularly realistic when they were CGI'd, but the actual models, so they switched between like the CGI models and then like practical models for particularly close-ups. And I thought the practical models were much better. I kind of wish that they could have stuck with that, but I imagine they were quite expensive to make and difficult to puppeteer and stuff. So particularly for the wide shots, they needed to CGI it. And it was a bit less convincing, I must admit. The wigs were horrendous and the fake facial hair, so bad. And I admit that I did get kind of distracted by that. Part of me is like, maybe it was meant to be that way, like again, part of the parody, but another part of me was like, no, they just didn't have the budget. So I don't know. Right at the end, the final battle with the aliens, at least the final battle they show, the editing is noticeably weird and bad. And I'm certain it's because they did not have enough prop aliens to make it work. You'll see the characters swinging swords, but you don't know what they're swinging at, and they're just making faces, and then sometimes it will cut to like, you know, a bit of green blood spurting out of a sort of arm thing. So look, that wasn't great, and I think that was the real moment where I just kind of, they couldn't sort of work around it. Everything else kind of fit within the realm of parody, or, you know, they actually did a decent job with what they had. You could definitely see the seams throughout, but I was willing to go with it because I was actually kind of enjoying it for the most part. It goes without saying that Bruce Campbell was my favourite part of this film. He's good at this kind of thing, and he was fun to watch, as always. Renee O'Connor was good too. Like, I haven't seen her much outside of Xena, and, you know, she was fine in this. I thought they would, you know, they worked really well together. Their romance was necessarily shortchanged. There was one actually really nice moment between them, but the rest of it kind of felt a bit tacked on. It was more tasteful than I was expecting it to be. It was actually just kind of tender and nice. They were kind of at their lowest. It's a nice moment that they could come together and have something nice between each other. And I wasn't actually expecting that. I was expecting to like either laugh or roll my eyes or whatever. But that one particular moment was actually, you know, kind of lovely, and I was really surprised. There was no dialogue though, it was all just the two actors. The rest, they didn't have really enough screen time because they get separated. She gets recaptured and he goes on to find more people for the rebellion to rescue her. So they didn't really get to develop it as much as, you know, obviously it's my preference. But, you know, your mileage may vary. I know not everybody cares about romances in films. So I guess I have to come to a final verdict. And if you like low-budget Sci-Fi Channel movie, creature feature type things, you could do worse than this one. And I think a lot of it is going to depend on how you feel about Bruce Campbell. Like, I really like him. I find him very entertaining. Some people probably hate him. He might be one of those actors. I don't know. But if you like Bruce Campbell and you like the low budget stuff, then this is actually pretty fun. Certainly not great by any stretch of the imagination, but it actually had some interesting ideas and, you know, did some interesting things with it. So I was actually more impressed than I thought I was going to be. Though, you know, cheap, schlocky stuff is not for everybody. So the real question is, am I going to keep it? That's a tough one for me. I said originally that I was going to be biased in favor of movies that were difficult to acquire. This one I ordered from the States, so it was difficult, and I imagine now it's out of print. I can't imagine it would have stuck around for very long. But the thing is, as much as I like Bruce Campbell, and as much as I kind of enjoyed this film, I can't see myself needing to watch this again. I think there's better Bruce Campbell things that I enjoy more. Like, I'm really tempted to keep it, both because I like collections, obviously, and Bruce Campbell was one at one point, and it did have its entertaining moments. But no, I'm gonna be good. Look, I don't need it. I don't need it. And that's really what counts here. I didn't love this movie enough, and I think, you know, as much as I think it's an okay example of what it is, I can't keep it just because I liked one scene and thought some of the ideas were okay but weren't executed as well as they could have been. Like, that's tempting enough for me, but no, look, it's gonna go. So up next, we actually have Alien, and Aliens after that. And I know somebody's gonna notice this one should have actually been before this, but then I would have had to split them up. So we messed with the alphabetical order because I can't stand collections to be split on my shelf. So that's just who I am as a person. And so we get Alien and Aliens next up, and I'm really looking forward to seeing these again, so I hope you'll join me next time. In the meantime, if you want to like and subscribe, that'd be amazing. If you want to comment, please do. Has anyone else seen Alien Apocalypse? I feel like I may be the only person in the universe. Otherwise, bye for now, and happy watching.